and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry.
Okay, number 2, approve consent agenda. Which is something underneath that, we'll go
Approve the agenda.
then we'll go to, I got it. So we'll go to number 3, approve agenda. So are we approving tonight's agenda or are we approving?
Yes, tonight's agenda.
Do we have to vote on that or what?
You need a motion.
No, we don't need a motion if it's a
No?
consent agenda.
Just consent.
Unless there's anybody that wants to pull it, then it just stands approved.
Okay, thank
Okay. Board goals for.
Just real quickly, Jeff asked that we make sure we turn our mics on, so just to let you know.
Oh, no, there. No, it does. Okay, board goals for 2015, 2016. What I propose to do tonight is discuss, I would like, first of all, to go over, and I learned how to do this tonight, so we'll do this using our technology.
Man, look at you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Okay, 2014, 2015 goal, that was last year. And when we, some of the things that we accomplished last year was we bought books, K through 12. We did, I got to open my notes here so I can,
Mrs. Matthews, would you like me to describe for you?
what?
Would you like me to describe for you?
Would you like her to write
Would
that
you like me
stuff
to
on
write
there for
it?
you?
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
We did the mentoring program. I just have to learn how to use it. We got new computers for the t-shirts. We got smart boards.
So you're saying that these are 2014 and
These are
15
the things that we
achievements?
did last year, just so everybody.
Those are achievements, yes.
Achievements.
You would consider these board achievements?
Huh?
You would consider these school board achievements?
Right, things that we all did together, voted
Okay.
on, or whatever, you know, I mean, if I'm wrong in any of these, then somebody please speak up, and perhaps at the end of this, Dr. Lorenz can put this in her weekly newspaper for review of the public, so that they can see what the school board did last year together as a whole. Okay, we're streaming the board meetings. We did get a new bus. Hopefully OPA, we had some feedback on OPA, and hopefully the food service, the food preparation, and the food that we're getting our kids is better. This year, I mean, we had a few things that we worked on, and the quality of food is better for the kids. We hired a technology coach. Looks like my handwriting's atrocious, but it's really not that bad. We gave a classified staff raise. And we did a sign-on bonus for new bus drivers. And I'm probably missing a lot of things, but when you try to brainstorm with yourself, sometimes it doesn't go too good. So, I mean, if anybody has anything else to add to that, I'm sure you do.
With your permission, could I write up our 3 board goals we had for this year, and then we can connect how what we've done?
We have technology.
Well, it was, our first one was, the third one was technology, implement instructional technology effectively.
Okay.
Our second one was to involve stakeholders through a variety of communication methods.
Mhm. Okay, stay.
Stakeholders, yeah. And it was really the communication piece. We were gonna try multiple
Right,
venues.
and we
Yeah,
have done that. And that
Yeah.
should probably be down here.
yes, we sure have. And then our first goal
Mhm.
was to increase student achievement, especially in the area of English language arts. And those were really our three goals, work goals for this school year. And as you can see, and Mrs. Matthews, you've done a great job of highlighting where, look at all of those actionable items that really support
Mhm.
the three board goals.
We also,
We did the K-12 right here.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
did,
And we do updates to show our growth in
right.
ELA and reading.
we recently purchased a surveillance system, which is gonna help the
Yeah,
district.
that would be over here.
Okay.
Because that started with this new board. But,
The new,
technology,
Mhm.
we did a technology coach, we did smart boards, we did streaming, we did
Interactive.
computers.
Mhm,
And the streaming could also be for the
Yes, it could.
stakeholders.
that's communicating with stakeholders.
Okay. So, and we've done more, you've had the breakfast for the seniors,
Yes.
you've had,
The luncheon,
numerous meetings,
outreach,
So, I mean, I just, if I missed any big things, I mean, and you could probably highlight these more in a monthly, in your weekly meeting to the. Now, what do we see as our 2015, 2016 goals as a board?
Where was the mathematics?
oh, in our smart, yes. And you do have a copy of our CSIP in your folders as well to reference, we felt that would be helpful, as well as our vision.
How do you do? Do you have to do that?
Wasn't there the stagnation in math?
So we can first.
Where's my red pen?
There was no progress.
Well,
Or was it just?
I can start this off, since everybody, I don't know what you're looking at exactly.
Oh, the CSIP.
CSIP,
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Did I have one of those?
Yeah, you got one.
Yes, it's the Panther thing.
There's the strategy right here, the strategy 2. It was the English one. It wasn't, I read somewhere that there was really no any increase in.
yeah.
So, this is supposed to tell us what?
Yeah, I
Well,
think
we're
so,
supposed to
because I
align
think
our
that it
board
was,
goals to the
I
CSIP
read
goals.
somewhere that there was no, it didn't go anywhere.
Why don't we start out with some of our goals, and then if they don't align to the CSIP, then we'll just.
Well, I would like to see us, for math achievement, an increase in mathematics achievement.
Mhm. And we are hoping with the investment in our new Math and Focus series,
Right.
as well as additional resources that were purchased the last 2 years for math, we're hoping that we will see the fruits of that labor, as far as having a new curriculum resource. And I think,
So we did math, we had math up here too.
we did buy some new math through the STEAM grant books at the high school. Yes, textbooks.
I don't know, say that,
Right.
whatever. Okay. Math,
I mean, honestly, I think that the third goal could be repeated again this year, especially with our, we're hiring a tech coach. We're going to expect that tech coach to do something. We're talking about potentially in the Mission 2020 plan, investing more in technology than we have already. And so I think it could potentially be a goal again.
On the goal for technology, next year, or is it the end of this year, is the last year for the STEAM grant?
Next year.
Next year,
Yeah,
okay.
all next year.
Maybe, I'd like to see something along the highly qualified staff. Not saying that we don't have highly qualified staff, but, keeping them, I think, and, I mean, developing, we're doing pretty good with PD, but, continue to make our district attractive to keep the teachers here and to bring in some more highly qualified teachers to replace the ones that leave. I think we can, look at making our district more attractive than some of the other ones somehow.
Now, I will say we were really thrilled that we are 100% highly qualified. And in our certified staff, and that's really important to us. That is mandated by DESE, but it's also something very important for the children we serve. So I agree. I think that's a wonderful thing to continue to support.
Yeah.
And I guess, Kelly, maybe your goal is a little bit stronger than the DESE requirement for highly qualified teachers, meaning that, teacher has certification in the area that they teach.
Right.
But you're wanting to make sure that our staff is highly impactful. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have anything?
No, so far I'm in agreement with the discussion that's been going on.
Mr. Joe?
I can't think of anything. I had something I wanted to say, but.
Dan?
I came up with the math achievement, but I'm looking at the CSIP right now, trying.
Well, I think Dr. Lorenz can kind of guide us if we're in CSIP or out of CSIP or whatever, once we put down our goals. Dr. Norton, would you like to put anything on here?
I think those are very good ones. Really do. Because we're committed to continue proactive communication and transparency as a board and leadership team. So that's the expectation.
Would you mind reading that ELA one that we had last year?
Increase student achievement, especially in the area of English language arts.
The year prior, I think we had to focus on math.
Well, and we are starting to see some really nice increases in some of our data. Mrs. Morris can echo this. Starting to see some nice increases in our ACT math data, which we will be sharing towards the end of the year with you. So I think you'll be very pleased. I think that has a lot to do with the highly qualified staff we've hired. And I think it has a lot to do with the curriculum resources that we're putting in the hands, of our teachers and students.
Hopefully our map testing went well. I know this year was probably our baseline for the following years.
Yes, with a new test and, the state, the verdict's still out with the state too, Mr. Ritchie, on, the testing for
Hopefully we'll
next
see
year.
some improvement in that.
Yes.
And we can build on that. So.
Absolutely. And because the test is changing, how we monitor and our progress will have to change. So we will have to do some adjustments on that, depending on different cut scores, from DESE.
I'd like to talk about a couple of things and where they fall into CSIP
Okay.
or not, or maybe they fall into different areas. I'd like to talk about the target classroom size. I'd like to talk about the sports complex. I'd like to talk about our policies. Amount of hours to graduate. And the alternative school.
I think that some of our achievements or goals that like Dr. Lorenz, the communication with the public, the stakeholders and stuff, those are items that are gonna carry over from year to year. And we can see, more and more progress with what she's doing, communicating with the public and working with different people in the community to build a better relationship with the district and the stakeholders. Good thing.
Speaking of the community involvement, that was 2014, the target was 5, the progress was 3.91, and its target met was no. It said neither response. I would have thought that had increased and not stayed stagnant, but why is it still stagnant on the CSIP?
We do the survey in the fall, and it's based off of last year, Mr. Pendilly, and that's a wonderful point. I mean, good point to make. It's based off of last year. So we won't get evaluated on this year until the fall.
Okay.
Correct, Mrs. Williams, because she puts out the survey.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a good. So we do hope to see some gains in this area. Hopefully.
So-
Oh, yeah.
Do we want to add in, or we can add?
Yeah, I think thank you very much for writing that up.
Yes.
I know, I can. I just get
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, I guess we could start at the top of 2015 and 16. The increase in math achievement. I know that we've, do we need a remedial math coach at the middle school level, or do we?
At this point, we don't feel like we need that, Mr. Birchie. We feel like we need to implement our new Math in Focus series, curriculum series with Fidelity. And what's a beautiful thing is a lot of the online resources are more accessible to us because of the new boards. Sometimes we had a few difficulties with our smart boards, and now we have interactive boards. So our teachers have full access. They could use online resources, but really full access. Feel like that in time we will start to see, the fruits of the work.
How many remedial math teachers do we have in the district?
We do not have any.
So,
We have two instructional coaches, and they have worked in the past with reading. And now we have them assisting with mathematics
and those
instruction
are in the
too.
elementary schools.
The 2 elementary, because they're title schools and we are eligible to do that.
Okay.
How did last year's focus on map testing? What was the percentage of, as far as the percentages in math and however they work it out?
We won't get the numbers for this year's test until the fall. Is that correct?
No, last year's.
Oh,
test.
last year's test. Okay.
Yeah, we just got an email today. It may be late June before we get them. They keep saying we were going to get them in
10 days.
And now it just changes, so we don't really know when we're going to
Where
get
were
them.
we sitting from last year? I know you won't get this year's,
Right.
but what was last year's as
I could look them up on, Mrs. Williams probably could look them up very quickly. I could go back to my office and look up scores I have on a jump drive.
I read it somewhere and I took a note
I
and
don't have
I
it off
don't
the top
know
of my head.
what I did with it. I'm the secretary.
Have it off the top of my head. I mean, overall, we did very well, but
See, I thought I
on our
read
math
that it
scores,
was
but
down.
it was down a little bit compared to the year before.
The
That
trend
was
line
true.
across the state was
Down.
down,
In math.
so in math,
Mhm.
for whatever reason.
Right.
It was a different assessment.
It was a different test.
Is it-
It's a different test this year, and it's going to
Yeah.
probably be a different test next year.
Yeah.
So it's,
Right.
it's hard for us to.
Right.
It's the only data point we have as a district to say really, I mean, besides we've got our internal testing that we do
Right.
track and we make sure that our trends are going in the right direction.
But there has to be a benchmark made somewhere.
And the
for
problem is if they
improvement.
keep testing that
Yeah.
different tests, then we keep moving the benchmark.
Mr. Pindelli, I will say we received all of our points for math, for our student achievement last year. That's why we did well. Our subgroups received all their points. There were, overall, we would have liked to have seen some of our math scores a little bit higher, maybe in some of the grade levels, but we still did well enough, to gain our points from DESE for them to say, you're
Right.
doing a good job with this. But
Mhm.
those are definitely data points we continue to monitor but again, it's hard when you have a baseline potentially 3 to 4 years in a row if the state
Yeah,
doesn't
and
come up
that's-
with a testing plan.
That's
Right.
the bad part about it. is
Right.
They keep changing it.
But I will say, and we will share more of this at the end of the year, our ACT math scores.
Is that for the
Going up.
11th grade ACT?
They can take it anytime during high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. And those are showing some increases, and we're really excited about that because we haven't seen those scores move in quite some time. Is that a fair statement, Ms. Morse?
But didn't all 11th graders have to take the
Yes.
ACT this year?
It was part of the new assessment program this year. We had quite a few sophomores take it too this year. We're
Good.
pretty happy with what we're seeing. Pardon?
This is not connected with the wireless.
Where's that tech coach yet? I
Yes,
mean, the,
Mr. Lee.
yeah.
Probably sitting in the car eating his
Eating dinner.
dinner.
Yeah.
I ate his potato cakes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So,
you just wanted the sandwich, right?
so are we comfortable with one of the goals being increased?
Well, I think we need to finish
I'll
talking
go through
about all of them.
first. Okay. Fair enough.
And then we can prioritize or, go from there. Technology, Matt?
I mean, this is just one of my pet issues, as you know, just because it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I think it's something that as a 21st century school is something that's very important. We've spent a lot of resources on it, and now it was time to see some gains. And so, during the next year, I think that's something that we need to continue to have our focus on, both from a board level to make sure that we're seeing some results, and then also to make sure that we're renewing our commitment to making sure that that technology is in the hands of the teachers to be able to implement that. There's so much going on right now with the new testing that's all computer based, with educational strategies that can be used to help remediate students just with software, as opposed to having a teacher being able to figure out exactly where the student is to get them to build up from that point. There's so many things that we have with our new ELA series that we've implemented that are available resources for our teachers to use. I just think it's something that, as I said last year, it's something that we've had in our CSIP for a long time, and we've said we were doing it. And I think teachers really have tried, but we weren't really giving them resources or time, or we weren't really measuring whether that was happening or not. And especially at the high school, where we've had the one-to-one program for multiple years now, lots of years. We ought to be seeing really big things happening with that one-to-one program. And, I think that we're setting up to be able to see some of those gains next year. And so I just don't want us to, take our eye off of that ball. If that's not one of our goals, it's not one of our goals, but it'll always be one of my goals.
What are we technology for next year?
As far as instructional,
Or as far as money wise? What will we be looking to buy next year?
Yes, it'll be presented in our Mission 2020 plan next week. But yes, looking to update laptop initiative, and also maybe even to take it eventually over time down through the 8th and 7th.
And that was the presentation we got before on that one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it in more detail. Yeah, next
Okay.
week when we present the plan.
With the technology developments and everything that's going on in the world and everything, are we also with the technology advancements and everything, are we also using pencil and paper at the same time
Yes.
to, so where you turn that if the computer doesn't work, everybody's shutting down, and you can't figure out change unless you have a computer, and it's just, and that's just one of the things that I would like to see with that is, continue to use pencil and paper also with the technology developments.
Yeah,
To not just
use technology because you can use technology. I understand that.
All of a sudden, when you got to do it with a piece of paper and pencil, then you can't do it.
Yeah, and I think that's very instructionally appropriate, especially at an elementary level, especially a lower elementary level. There's a lot less. There's a lot more manipulatives. There's that learning has to happen with the whole brain, and that doesn't necessarily happen in front of an iPad all the time or in front of a computer all the time. So, but I think that our teachers are very cognizant of strategies to make sure that we're not just using the computer as a crutch. But that the opposite is true as well. We can't just use the computer as a pencil and paper replacement, meaning that it's just not something that we type up things instead of writing them down. And that has been the case in the past, I think. That it's just purely a substitution. And that's why we looked at kind of look at that SAMR data, that substitution is not good enough. We need to be augmenting, we need to be modifying what we're doing, and we need to redefine what we're doing based upon having a technology resource to be able to do that. And so in those cases where it is appropriate, which there are, especially as we climb up as we get in the middle school and high school, there's a lot more appropriate things for those kids to be doing to stretch themselves. And that's important for us to not be using the smart board just to draw like we could with a chalkboard.
Right.
But to actually be using that to redefine what the kids are doing, to do something that they couldn't have done because we didn't have that.
Yeah, because I think it gets you a full circle of learning then instead of just a half circle basically of just technology.
Right. You can go too far.
And then all of a sudden, okay, I need you to write this.
Yeah.
So.
Any more discussion on that? Okay, highly qualified staff. And you said we already
Yes,
had,
we're already doing that.
okay,
We're 100%.
We're 100%. We just want to work on retaining and recruiting as people retire or leave the district, want to work, correct?
Yes, and make
Stay
things,
the same.
we have a really good district, and I
Yes, we
think
do.
that people need to see that, and people need to know all the good things that we're doing here. And somehow, if we can make things attractive to get, for when these people do retire, we want to replace them with really good teachers. And so, I just think that we can do some more positive promoting of ourselves to bring more highly qualified teachers to our district when teachers retire or move. And I just think we can do that a little bit better than we have. Not saying that we're not getting in the highly qualified teachers, because we are. But when they move on, we need to make our district attractive more than Warrensburg or Sedalia.
Well, and I would like to share because we had this conversation not so long ago. We went to the annual teacher placement day up at the University of Central Missouri. And our district, as well as some of the larger districts, maybe in the urban area, all had lines throughout the whole day. There were many districts around our local area and around us in physical proximity at that placement day that did not have lines. And Dr. Norman looked at me and said, "Are we always this busy? Do we always have lines like this?" And I said, "Yes, we do." Because I said, we do, we have a wonderful place for people to teach and for students to learn. And so that was really a testament to that. So I think that's something that we take great pride in, Ms. Davis. I think that's important. We do to make sure that we are recruiting highly qualified teachers who are student-centered and making sure they have the resources and the professional development and a fair compensation, package before them, which we are very competitive in the West Central region. So that's something we prided ourselves in, for
So I
many
don't-
years.
Yeah, so I don't think that's, I mean, something that we need to add. It's just something that I think we could work a little bit
Right.
better on as a community as well as,
Absolutely.
as a district.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm glad you brought last year, we agreed as a board, not only did we want to have 3 goals, we wanted to have 3 positive talking points, because that, I think that's what you're speaking to a little bit too. And remember, those 3 positive talking points were that in 2013 statewide MAP student achievement data, we ranked 66th out of 563 districts and first in the West Central region, which was a really, I mean, we were doing well. We also, at the time, remember last year when we talked, we had a 45.7% fund balance. We had a fiscally sound budget. That was one of our other positive talking points that we made a commitment we were going to share out in the community with our stakeholders, right? And then the other was that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education accredited with distinction for 9 consecutive years. Those are significant accomplishments, and I remember and so I really think we need to talk about what are some positive talking points we want to take with us, for next year.
Suggested that maybe
Yeah,
we
that's great, Mrs. Matthews, that's a good idea.
a review and put it in the paper so
I agree.
that people know what we've done and where we're going with this. Okay, target class size. I think some of our classes are perhaps a little bit too big. And talking to Dr. Lorenz about this, she says that DESE says that 28 kids is an acceptable class size or an okay class size.
It's in
And
the ideal range.
it's in the ideal range. And I think our third and fourth grade classroom sizes are, they only have 25 kids in them right now. Next year, I think the fourth grade classes are probably going to be about the same, if not a little
Pretty
bit higher,
close.
pretty close to the same.
Close, what
Because
we're
the third
projecting.
graders are moving up to fourth grade. And whether we hire an additional teacher so that we can break that down a little bit to help the kids in that classrooms. And they're, with the writing points that they're giving individual kids that they're supposed to be giving, it gives them approximately 2 minutes each for each child, which is really not enough time when you have 25 kids in each classroom. So that's where I'm going with that one.
Now, on the, I'm sure this is done, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. Like, if the current kindergarten class is a large class, and of course you lose so many, a percentage over the years because of military moves and et cetera, et cetera. Now, is there a long-term place if, like, say it's a large kindergarten class coming in, and then you follow that kindergarten class all the way through to look at your future for teachers and supporting equipment, instead of, we're getting to that point and go like, oh my, what are we going to do now? We have this large class and now we need to hire a teacher, we need to do this, we need to do that. But is there a long-term projection done to where followed through on their on their advancement?
Yes, we do a cohort tracking to see, and of course, just because of the mobility of our student population, but most certainly we do a projection out to see where we think we might be. And I do have some math information if you'd like to look at the specific scores there. I can share it with the board if they'd like to see it.
Now, I know small class sizes were always a pull to our district because we've always had lower class sizes, smaller ones. What, are you getting a sense of what some of the teachers, too much of a class size, or do we DESE model?
Well, certainly we do welcome input from our teachers, and we do to speak with them. We also go with recommendations from our building administrators when they, principals when they see a need. Look at, we had some grade levels that really we thought would have more students in them and didn't. And so we probably were overstaffed, a little bit this year in one of the areas, but with the needs of the children, it kind of worked out, that the numbers were lower. But I think we have to be good stewards, and we have to look, in our lower elementaries. I know Dr. Norman and I have spoke a lot about this. We really, the desirable standard is 17 students in K through 2, and we think that's not too large of a number. That's desirable. The range is 17 to 20, but the low end of that is 17. Well, sorry, it's 17 to 25. Sorry, I better tell you right. 17 to 25 desirable is right around that 7 to 20 range. When you go into the upper elementaries, 3rd, 4th grade, you can have anywhere from 20 to 27, and then in 5th and have anywhere from 22 to 30 students. 7 through 12 is 25 to 33. So we do really well as far as our class sizes and numbers. The goodness we have right now is that we have a bigger kindergarten class this year out of Wyman Elementary. We have a smaller one here at K&E. Then vice versa at K&E, we have a rather large 3rd grade class. We have a smaller 3rd grade class at Whiteman. So it's, that gets a little tricky sometimes, knowing exactly how many sections will be needed. But we do try to do those projections out.
And that's if all the planets are aligned and
Yes,
everybody's
exactly.
being on their best behavior.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because one kid could actually count for 3 by the end of the day.
I will say though, our building principals, our teachers, our administration, our Board of Education has been very responsive to those things this year. We have hired at least 2 para positions this year in response to student needs in some of the classrooms. There are more needs. So that's important that we do that, because we want definitely to provide every opportunity for students to be successful learners.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to hit on what Ms. Davis said, one kid could count as many as 3 in a situation where you have, 25 kids or 26 kids in one classroom. It makes it very to teach these kids, and, it does take away from all the kids when you have that many in there and you're having issues.
So just
And
for,
I'm referring basically, hitting on a 3rd grade level with some of the classroom sizes that we have there in Knob Noster,
Right.
at K&E.
And I think, Mr. Birchie, too, another thing that as we walk and assess the situation, some of those rooms are a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
So, it may be, good for us to look at class sizes that we're anticipating for next year. And,
you
a
said
larger class
classroom
needs
silence.
to be a larger, classroom space. The smaller ones could go in a smaller classroom.
I mean, just for reference purposes, in the state of Missouri, the average students to classroom ratio is 18 students per class.
Yes.
In Knob Noster, we're in 2014, we were 16.
Yes.
Holden was at 17. Warrensburg was at 17. Sedalia was at 20. So,
Well, that's including our high school, because our high school.
but that's
students-
including all of these high
all
schools
the
as well.
grade.
All grade
Absolutely.
levels.
I would agree. But definitely our ratio as a district is in
as a
line.
district is
I can
in
understand
line.
that there's maybe some internal,
And
repositioning.
That's all I'm saying.
yeah, no, I understand that.
Okay.
Board goal wise though, is that something we want to set as a board
I don't
goal?
know, we're just talking about them right
Okay.
now, and then we'll go down and
Got
eliminate whatever we want to eliminate, and if somebody wants to add something else to it,
Sure.
then we can, and we're just
Yeah, just
discussing,
brainstorming. Gotcha.
brainstorming, if you will. Okay, I put down a sports complex. I don't know how many acres is out there. Does anybody know?
I don't know.
out at the baseball complex and
The
softball.
sports complex, it's called, its title out there is sports
Yes, it
complex,
is.
it's not baseball.
And softball fields.
Right, it says, how many acres do we have out there?
How many is, it's gotta be somewhere.
I am not sure, but we can look that up.
I'm sure our maintenance guys would have an answer for that.
Well,
I think it's,
around 20 acres it has out there. I would like to see some more, we're gonna call it a sports complex. You know, whether we project a track out there, soccer field. I don't know what else.
A long-term future.
A long-term future plan, and not all at once, you know, because obviously that's going to run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. But but something, you know, have somebody what we could do out there to make it into a true sports complex.
Generate some revenue for the school. If we hold, I don't know if we hold out there or meets out there or something.
generate, I mean, at least from the high school, a lot of extra dollars, but they do opportunities for, you know, to host things,
Right.
for a home crowd.
But I meant
you
for
know.
like the community,
Like
I guess.
community.
Yes, I should have
Yeah.
said.
No, I'm not advocating that we move the football field out there. Or I'm just saying to utilize acreage that we have perhaps in the future down the road, you know, little by little, maybe putting in,
Oh, I was trying to calculate the acreage off of Google Maps, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not good enough. I need more instructional technology.
You'd use pencil and paper.
If I use pencil and paper, then I wouldn't have to. Touche.
We can
Right.
definitely follow up
Uh,
with the
Yeah.
acreage and have that to share.
Well, not just the acreage, I'm just saying utilize the sports complex as a sports complex. If anybody has any thoughts on that.
It's just hard in a small community. That facility is honestly the class baseball facility in our area until you get up to the city. And you know, we probably need to do some marketing to try to attract some more of those type of things. But revenue wise, I mean, baseball's not a new sport. It's just not.
Oh, no, I'm not.
And there's
talking
really
about-
not a, I mean, you know, it's, if there was a revenue sport, it would be football. And we have hosted district games. We have hosted games for other facilities and charged when we've, you know, been able to do that. But it's just hard with a non-revenue sport to make that work.
Do you know if the District 2020 facilities side looked at all at the complex itself?
We had brainstormed different options during our BCC committee meetings. And, you know, with possibly maybe the addition of some sports over the next couple of years, we'll have to look at numerous options. But again, believe the committee saw so many more immediate needs right now that would be kind of costly. That I think the focus was, what can we update existing that we already have at this point. At least the consensus.
Well, as I'll reiterate, I'm not talking about right now, I'm talking about
In time,
a
yeah.
plan for the future, whether it's 2030, whether it's 2050, you know, whatever. I mean, we have the acreage out there, we put baseball out there. Why not think about utilizing perhaps soccer? I mean, we racked our brains out a couple meetings ago trying to find a place to put the soccer field and maybe a different tennis court, because the one that we had was in need of repair, and we went here, we went there's
Of conversation.
lots of conversations, and it's just, anyway. Policies, everybody got the MSBA, thing that says that we should review our policies annually. The board members should review the policies annually. And it definitely says that we should review the handbooks, on an annual basis. I guess I'd like to see us form some kind of committees, break it down so that we review some of the policies that are, haven't been looked at for a while. And just see if they're okay with everybody. We did talk to the, Dwayne Martin about that, and what he suggested for the policies was that if we form committees to do the policies, that we form the committees and then have the committees bring the information back to the board look at it with their recommendations, and then have Dr. Lorenz take it to the MSBA people and the DESI people and the state people to make sure that we're not breaking any rules or laws or anything before we actually vote on any changes. And, so, I mean, that's a procedure that we could follow to, make sure that we're in line with where we're supposed to be.
I will say I did put something in your folder because I knew we'd be talking quite a bit about board policies, and just to reiterate, a school district's policy are its voice. MSBA as an advocate for school board leadership enhances the power of your school district's voice through trying to prepare and develop and write clear, well-written school board policies. Also talks about that, and we do have MSBA's full policy services. Katie and I looked that up. It keeps member districts up to date on changes brought by any legislative action, agency regulations, or educational trends. All materials produced by the Policy Services Department is reviewed by MSBA's legal, legislative staff members, as well as a political advisory committee, which consists of superintendents, school law attorneys, board members, and insurance specialists. So there's a number of levels, and processes that each policy goes through to be examined through our full maintenance policy service. So I did want to provide that to you. Also, I do know that MSBA does provide local in-service training to boards of education, so you can understand how to make your policies work even better for your district. So that may be something that we, might want to think about as well. That will be up to our board, but something to think about.
And that's what we put on our CSIP when we were doing the CSIP committee
Yes.
together. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
I just think it's probably pretty important that we go over every single policy, because as you know, I've
Right.
contacted you
Some of
on
the links weren't good.
several that
Yes.
have just been,
Right.
you can't read them. I mean, and there are ones that would have been really important to current happenings and
Right.
things that could have happened at any time.
Some of the links in the code.
Yeah,
coding
they're just
features
a
weren't
mess.
taken off of.
Yeah.
They had to be cleaned up. You're right.
Are you wanting to ask for people to do that now, or?
No, like I said, we're just talking about these things, and, when we get done, we'll prioritize or see where we want to go or not go with any of this stuff, or maybe somebody has thought of something to add to it or whatever. Hours to graduate is, DESI requires 24 hours to graduate. We require 26 hours to graduate with no exceptions, except if somebody comes in from another school district. And that school district says 24 hours
If they were a senior and they're moving in
if they're a senior moving in.
and they were in good standing and would have graduated.
But if you look at the comparison of DESI and our requirements for the school district, we're in exact alignment with DESI as far as the the actuality of math, English, science, etc. The only difference is the electives.
Right.
So really, I see this, if a kid is not gonna graduate, I see it more of a counseling thing along the way to try to help that individual with counseling, because I really don't think we're out of line with the 26 hours. I don't see that as bad at all. I mean, you got 4 years to make that 2 hours up. I don't know. I think that's more of a counseling thing or an attitude thing, possibly. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of line saying anything like that, but I don't think that we're out of line with what we have as hours for graduation.
I know that, the counseling staff is very, very responsive to those concerns when we have those. I mean, goodness, I was one of those kids back in the day, because I didn't have half a credit of American history my senior year, and I was not going to graduate. And so Dr. Lorenz and Mrs. Lorenz back at that time and Mrs. White pulled me in the office and said, your schedule is going to change this semester. And so I ended up taking a lot of American history my senior year. But those are the things that we have to do with those kids. And my biggest concern would be lowering the standards. I don't think that that's necessarily doing our kids a service by lowering the standard. It also does have an ancillary effect with more kids graduating the semester. And I'm not so sure that that would be positive as well. There are kids that have graduated semester and they're mature enough to do so and use that time in a valuable basis to go to college and so forth. But then we lose all of that money that we get for all of those seniors for that entire half year. And it really does create a problem as far as whether they get to be invited to prom, but they can't be a part of the track team, and it really creates some different issues. I think it would be more of a high performing kids would pull out of our district a little bit earlier, and I don't know if that's necessarily what we want to incentivize, which that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about trying to help the kids that are, struggling. But I think that some of our top end kids would take advantage of that to pull themselves out, and then we won't be getting paid ADA on them. And I think it's important that they be in school. I think it's part of a maturing process that they be there for 4 years. And if they can excel and get through all 4 years of material in 3.5, then more power to them. But I think it would be a lot easier if we went down to the minimum DESE standard for a lot of kids to graduate a semester. And I'm not so sure that there are enough programs and facilities and things for them to get involved in outside of school that would be a positive development.
Well, I agree with you, Matt. I agree with Mr. Pangeli. I mean, I know the state standard or DESE standard, the state standard is 24 and our standard is 26, and we want to hold our kids to a higher standard. We want these kids to be college and career ready. But we are going to have we're going to have some kids at the bottom that just struggle all the way through school. What do you do? I mean, what do you do with a kid that spent 4 years in high school? He's got 25 credits, and do you not let him graduate? I mean, he did meet the state standards, him or her. Can you give that kid a waiver? Is that a possibility? We don't want to lose our kids to a half a semester getting out early and changing our ADA, and that's a loss to the district there. But I'm all for keeping the standards as high as they are, but making sure that we don't let anybody slip through the cracks that possibly ended up with 24, 25 credits and is going on to the Coast Guard or the military or something else, maybe, or welding school or something else for that matter. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
So is there a program where you could maybe grant the number of kids that possibly need that a waiver? Maybe Mrs. Morris would be more inclined to answer this because she's the expert at it, not me.
I don't know that I'm an expert at it, but I would say I know what kind of kid you're talking about. That kid who needs that extra half credit. But I would say through experience, those kids who we're talking about are the kids who have not failed electives. Those are the kids who have failed their core classes that are required by state law anyhow. So a waiver would not be possible for them because they would have to have those state requirements to graduate anyhow.
So if they,
So like an English class, a math class, government, those types
instead
of
of it
things.
being an elective. So, when those kids don't graduate, does that affect our DESI numbers?
Well, it affects our graduation
Yes,
rate,
graduation.
that's for sure, which is a big deal.
Absolutely.
That has not been an issue.
It's not a factor.
Those kids are usually, I mean, you know about those kids long before they get to senior
Right.
level.
And we have lots of options as far as recovery of those credits,
And-
online recovery, there's all
And
kinds
they
of
are
options.
increasing all the time. You know, we've implemented our Apex credit recovery this year. We have,
Gateway,
Gateway, and we have interventions, so many that, they're just numerous. They really are. So
well, that's good.
we're really not talking about those 2 elective credits that we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Those aren't the reason why kids aren't graduating. It's those core classes that are required by the state. If the very, very few that we're even talking about. That's really not an issue for us.
So like Matt said, if you lower the standards, what are you gonna lose for kids trying to go to school that much earlier? Move on to college, so, and that would have an impact on us.
It would.
Yeah, I don't think that we're out of line with our standards at all. I think that, I don't think there would be any room for change or anything on, like I said, we're right on line with DESI on what is there, and the 2 electives, as she alluded to, are not the problem, it's the core classes, so. It's just, like I said, I don't know if that comes down to a counseling thing or what, has someone been working with this individual for the last 2 years or 4 years to see they're failing or stumbling but I also understand the other side, there's only so much you can do. The individual has to put themselves forth too, you can't do the work for them, and it's just, it just boils down to,
Well, I think we've done a really good job at finding these kids early, and Mr. Hill had that big push with the reading, and we have done some things to catch those kids as well. So, I feel that we've done a pretty good job trying to cover those things. So, I'm in agreement with you all on that.
I think the other 2 hours, if nothing else, helps us argue that kids are more career and college ready.
Yep.
Still trying to prepare them.
wasn't it several years ago? I was trying to recall this in my mind. Several years ago, there was a family that had percentages dropped in the district. This was a while ago. Had percentages dropped in the district, or was arguing that ours were higher than Warrensburg's and Sedalia's, so that I think the school board came together at that time, dropped the percentages, and that family ended up moving to Warrensburg anyway. So,
So you're talking about the weighting of the classes, so it became as a part of the A+
yeah,
program.
remember that? That was a big deal.
That was 10, 15 years ago, but
Yes.
yeah, absolutely, it was a big
Wow,
deal.
is that long ago?
Yeah,
Wow.
we get old
You're
fast.
getting old.
Well, it fixed it by the time I got out of high school. I was, the bottom of the top 10% of my
Yeah.
class because of that, because we didn't have that same standard. So
Yeah, 'cause I
thankfully for
remember
me, I
it
was
a big
top
thing.
10. but,
It was a gym
barely.
filler. It was.
So-
It was.
Yeah,
We had
absolutely.
some community forums. and-
Yeah.
It was a pretty big deal, and then.
It was.
So yeah, there's an appropriate, we don't want to have too high of a standard that it's impossible to reach, and you don't want to have too low of a standard. And I think that's where we're trying to say we're at, is that we're right in that median
Right,
ground.
I think that where we are is comfortable, once again, it's not only the school that has to, kind of pick these problems up along the way, but that individual has to be willing to say, okay, I've got to dedicate myself, but like I said, it's up to them basically, and you hate to say it, but it's, you had 4 years to try and,
And they have longer if they need that.
yeah,
We work with them longer than 4 years if we need to. So.
It's just
Okay.
unfortunate, but what do you do?
Moving right along here, the alternative school, that's Gateway, is my understanding. Is there any, what I'm thinking is we spent a lot of money to send, what do we have, 6 slots?
4.
4.
4 slots. over to Warrensburg, and could we do that in our district and maybe utilize that money in-house to help our own kids and maybe have more than 4 slots? You know, the busing, well, they use their own transportation.
They provide their own transportation.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's my thinking with the Gateway program, to bring it into Knob-Noster and help our own kids out here instead of sending them out of district.
So are you saying hire some additional teaching help or maybe an after-school program, maybe tutors or what?
Well, how many kids are actually in a classroom over at, in a Gateway classroom?
I would say anywhere from 4 to 10. Would you say, Ms. Morris?
Probably.
4 to 10. You have to realize they have a math, science, social studies, and English teacher. Plus they have a counselor and director on staff, correct, there? So if you count up that many FTEs, teachers, I mean, you're talking about adding 5 to 6 positions anyway. In this case, for 4 students.
And
So,
very rarely do we need more than 4 slots.
right, and some of those are part-time, aren't they, Mrs. Morris? They go to VOTEC part-time
Really
and then,
great about being flexible with us to where
or work
we
study.
actually are sending sometimes more than 4 students up there at a time. But
So-
very
so the
rarely
cost-
do we even need to do that.
The cost of sending them over there
Is cheaper than us hiring like 5 to 6 people to do it in district
And
here.
we would have to have a different facility, right, for them as well.
Idealistically, yeah, or a separate wing or
Right.
area.
Now, I think, sorry, I think that's a valid deal. I know, or something to consider, at least for the administration going forward in the out years. Because if I remember right, Warrensburg has done something like that. They pulled it in-house on their own, and they've even opened up to offer other schools bringing in. But they did that. They took on that expense, and I'm guessing because of the numbers, they could support that cost.
Right.
You know, where we'd be lopsided doing it. But I think it's just something that the administration probably needs to stay focused on, that if our numbers would increase, maybe there's a day that it becomes more frugal for us to do that.
And that's what they were talking about at the regional meeting.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
They were, and Marshall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That
a
is
good
right.
program.
It was.
We were talking about that.
and of course, keeping the lines of communication open for the public, for everybody. Okay, so some of the ones that we probably can eliminate up there based on our conversation here is you could probably eliminate the alternative school, is that correct?
Yes.
I would agree.
Okay. And we could probably eliminate the amount of hours to graduate. Do we want to prioritize, highly qualified staff we want to continue to have? I don't know if that needs to be
I think that's more in just our communication aspect of what we discuss with the public, and we portray. Right. Yeah,
I'm trying to get this down.
that
so
could
we
go
don't-
off because we're already doing
We'll
that.
just keep our commitment to it.
Yes.
6 or 7 things we're having.
You just kill my goal.
Yeah, if he doesn't want one else.
Kill my goal.
Yeah, sorry.
Now you gotta find the undo
That's all right.
button.
I know what you mean.
Erase.
That's okay. No, don't worry
Just
about it.
kidding.
Do not worry
Just
about
kidding.
So,
Yes.
how many do we want to have, how many, do we want to prioritize them? Well, this is fun.
I think normally we try to stay 3 or 4 just because otherwise it can be a lot of goals. And I think, highly qualified staff, for instance, to me is probably more of an intention or an action step they continue to focus on.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's one thing I guess I want to say, even though we scratch some of these off, doesn't mean that
Right.
there's not already action steps in here that they're kind of keeping that focus. But I personally think sports complex could go. I think that's something long range. You're definitely correct in that we need to look at what's available to use out there for the extra grassland that's there. But that might be more of a resources thing going forward versus a board goal, just, you know, up front saying, okay, we're going to definitely do more. Because this is stuff we kind of want to see that we've made gains on in the next year. And we're not going to be able to gauge that sports complex in the next year
I
unless
think that, and-
we go and make a plan for next year.
Well, we have a really nice sports complex, but I think the changes to it or adding anything out there is a long-term facilities maintenance issue down the road. When we have a need for something, we probably could address it at that time to possibly make changes where we're going to put something, you know, in the future. So I feel like that would fall under facilities maintenance.
Okay.
But, you know, the idea of doing something out there later on down the road and, you know, possibility of soccer or a track or something like that, you know, being just long-term facility maintenance. So.
I think policies is a good goal.
I think it's very important, like I said, because I've been really reading and studying these, and there are a lot of mistakes on the policies that need to be updated and that just need to, the wording needs to be rewritten for ease of understanding.
Well, I have a question on policy. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Well, he said the verbiage or the wording needs to be rewritten on some. And if you read their old policies as opposed to their new policies, they're, you know, literally trying to make changes for the better. It's probably hard to stay caught up on all that. I feel like we're looking at the policy situation based on the fact the last board meeting, it was in new business. And as some of the board members were new and stuff, and myself, it takes a while to read these policies. So when the changes come out, you should make yourself aware of what the changes are. And I think that's one of the big reasons we're discussing policies, is because the more we look into it, the more we read some of these policies, the more we figure out that some of them are flawed, some of the wordage is, you know, not the way maybe it should be. But I think MSBA, you know, they try to stay on top of that. I looked at other school districts and their policies, and some of them, they adopt AA's policies also, but a lot of those districts out there, their policies are as far back as, you know, 2004 and before. You know, they haven't made any changes. I mean, I looked at other districts in this local area, you know, that and I know about updating their policy service, or did they pay for it initially and just decide to stick with it? You know, Mike?
What's that? I'm sorry.
I mean, why some of them are so outdated at other districts?
Probably because they don't, you know, subscribe to the same policy level service that we do. Because we're you know, we're paying the MSBA to make sure that every time there's a legislative change, every time there's a case law that comes down that says that something really needs to be changed, that there's an update. And, you know, and I agree, you know, grammatically, and there's some specific issues. They you know, even in these updates we're talking about today, they've caught some of their own things that they needed to fix.
And it really just protects the district if they're right and if they're readable and if they're, you know, if they follow the new technology.
And because really a lot of what Mr. Pendilli found, I was glad he did, was just making sure the links were correct and some of the coding errors were not taken off. So that, but they fixed them when I called. They were quick to respond to fix those and apologized. And so but you know, I think it's always good that we familiarize ourselves with our policies. So, you know, we might even just choose to, you know, they send updates, we'll highlight those, spend some time talking about them. But they are, I mean, we hired MSBA to keep us legally compliant, making sure that, you know, we're following the expectations and the statute across the board.
And that is one of our CSIP goals.
It is.
It was an action
So
step.
I'm fine with
The
that.
governance.
Just to review on, yes.
Well,
I agree
we
with
haven't
the update.
prioritized them yet, we're just trying to go through increase in math achievement.
I think I think that we always need to have some sort of a student achievement goal. I mean, we don't always have to, but I think we should, so.
I agree.
I put technology back down here.
Now to stop worrying.
Nerd.
Communication.
And the communication we were going to continue to do.
Right.
I do believe that's what we discussed, right?
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry. So as a board, as we look at these policies and we determine that a policy doesn't meet our exact needs and we want to change that or change something minor in a particular policy, you know, I guess will we need a group of people or will we need a policy committee to maybe oversee some of this?
Let's prioritize what we got here
Okay.
first.
Okay.
And see, I mean, I think it's gotta be a consensus of everybody. We're just talking, I'm putting stars by it. And then the board needs to vote on it and see, you know, if we wanna do it. I mean, we haven't said yes or no. Technology, do we wanna start at?
I do.
Yeah, I guess, you know, when we're looking forward to college and career readiness, anything you're following, I mean, if you're following any other schools nationally, following corporations, if we lose focus on technology, and it is one of our goals under resources, so I don't think we totally lose focus on it, but I think it still needs to be kind of there as a number one, number two type thing, because the world is going to leave us behind if we decide to let to fall back on it.
So now then let's prioritize.
That's a good question.
You know, let's go with 1, 2, 3, and 4. I hear a lot of conversation about tech policy. Do we want to make that number 1?
No, I think that increasing, I mean,
Keep the
it's,
kids.
kids first.
Yeah, absolutely,
So this is number 1,
absolutely.
okay?
And I think technology, because that affects your students and it affects your staff,
So this is number 2.
overreaches everything.
Communication and policies.
I mean,
I think communication
should
is,
probably be the third goal.
yeah, I mean, I feel that communication should be because we worked really hard to bridge that gap and get the communication out there, and we still have work to do, so.
Okay, and then number 4 is policies. Now, what do we want to see done in each one of these areas? Okay, we already pretty much have communication now. Would you agree with that, Julie?
We are doing a very proactive job with that. Yes. Now, something I would like to add though too is, again, I think as Kelly brought up, Mrs. Davis, brought up, I think it's a very good point is, as a team, we really need to, you know, create these positive talking points and share those. You know what I mean? Out in the community, each of us, you know, all of us sitting at this table.
That's why I brought
Yeah,
this up.
exactly.
You know,
Um,
we have to accentuate the positive of what's
Exactly.
going on in the community and not necessarily all the negative, for various reasons. But,
Well, this Board of Education has accomplished a lot of great things on the behalf of students this year. And so we do need to talk about that because
well, we do, and I
yeah,
think a lot of
do.
people, a lot of public people aren't saying that.
right.
And they're making negative comments out there, whether it's on the streets, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's, you know, so the people, you know, and that's why I put these down and I asked you to put it in your review,
Yes,
your yearly review out to the public, so everybody is made aware.
right.
And when we miss some, add some of that to whatever we miss. I mean, you know, I didn't put down the breakfast down there, the big things. I mean, these things here cost us, you know, that's for the kids. The mentoring is for the kids. The smart boards is for the kids. You know, also having better food is for the kids.
The tech coach in the long run helps the
tech coach
kids.
in the long run, I think, is going to be for the kids. So we do a lot of things for the kids, and, you know, I'm not sure that the public is aware of all those things, so, and as we're gonna do a lot of things this year, I hope, for the
Absolutely.
kids, you know. So I think we pretty much have communication covered. Technology, the 2020 mission, and everybody's had a chance to go over that. I think a lot of the computers and so on and so forth are gonna be brought up at the next board meeting. You know, buying more smart boards, buying more, one-to-one laptops, so on and so forth, we'll vote on at the next meeting. Or discuss at the next meeting. I guess that's the question I have is, do you guys wanna do this tonight, or do you wanna think about it and then, you know, vote on it in public session, you know, at the 13th of May board meeting? How do you wanna handle that?
Yeah, I'd say put it in stone right now, just,
Well, I'm fine with that.
and then we can develop on it as we go along, even, and, you know, I mean, you know, get the main ideas down now, get them put in stone, then we can, as we go along, we can always develop on it, and it won't be nothing but better.
Right.
So,
Ms. Matthews, can I read and align the ones that are close to what we had this last year to see if the board is happy with the verbiage on that? So for example, increased student achievement, especially in the area of math. Are we okay with that? Last year we had ELA. Is everyone okay with that
Yeah.
wording? Just to simplify just a little bit. Involve stakeholders through a variety of communication methods. Is that still okay, or do we want to change that in any way?
Are we gonna find any different methods to try?
We will always try. Yeah, definitely.
Cause I know we had.
She's got a Snapchat.
Not yet, but I can, but no, we
So
really
you
are.
know it stays somewhere.
Yeah, it stays somewhere virtually, yes. You know, I think that, leaves it open-ended enough, but I do think we have to look at, you know, a variety of communication methods. I think we have to continue.
Yeah,
that.
because
And
I
then
know we had talked about, if the community meetings weren't working, how we could.
Mhm. Yes.
okay, so how do we wanna handle going out reviewing the policies?
Well, can I do the technology
Oh, I
one
thought-
just
I'm
real quick?
sorry,
I'm so
yeah.
sorry. Now we have implement instructional technology effectively. Do we want to put anything about technology integration?
Yeah, so I would think you gotta
See,
expound
that's
on
what I
what,
do too.
yeah, expound on what it was last year, because, yeah, you hired the tech coach and everything, now
Uh-huh.
it's time for that to
I would
explode.
agree. So do we want to implement instructional technology integration
Yes.
effectively?
How about just integrate technology effectively?
Integrate, that's better, yeah. Integrate.
See, you may have been
Technology
at the bottom,
effectively,
but you're all right.
yes.
No,
Okay.
for a reason.
And then we have to work on the verbiage for the policies, yes.
Right, how does the board, how do you guys wanna handle that? You wanna form little,
Well,
Or do we want to talk about the specifics of how we're doing it, or we just talk about the goal, writing the goal language?
well, I mean, goal 5, governance says govern the LEA district and which is local education agency, district in an effective, efficient and effective manner, providing leadership and representation to benefit the students, staff, and patrons of the district. And objective 1, it says the board will create policy and regulations that are aligned and consistent with CSIP goals.
so that's the verbiage you're gonna use.
Well, we could, or we
That's a
could
lot.
use, enact policy and regulations based on recommendations of Missouri.
Because I think we've enacted the policies,
Yes.
and we continue to do that, but I think what we're talking about is
Just manage-
systematically
Yeah.
reviewing.
Well, there's
The
a
policies.
review policy updates from MSBA.
Okay,
Yeah, it has to do with the management of the policies is what we're, I think, lacking.
It says recommend and adopt policy and regulations consistent with CSIP goals and MSBA recommendations.
So review and manage, review and manage policies
I'd be good with systematically review all board policies throughout the year, or something to that effect.
Systematic.
And because we're just talking about, hey, let's give everything to once over.
Right. Systematically review all board policies.
Okay, so now how are we gonna do that?
I think
We have
I
a
think it
lot
makes
of,
an incredible sense to follow policy board BCE that's on the books right now. It talks about creating a committee. That committee, it would not be able to be created, I mean, it would not have many more than 3 board members, because any more than that would be a quorum. But that committee would be able to spend the time necessary to be able to review policies, make suggestions. I mean, I know that you talked, Mary Ann, earlier about the process as far as bringing it to the board level and then getting the MSBA approval. I think it may make sense for the committee to get MSBA approval before it comes before the board.
well, there might be a lot of conversation about it. That's why I said bring it before the board.
Sure,
first,
well-
and then we can discuss it again. But we have A through K, and I think just for 3 board members to do that would be a lot.
Well, I mean, we're not
So-
asking you to do it all. We wouldn't be asking, I mean, honestly, the way that's set up in BCE is that the board president would appoint the committee, and at the direction of the board. And if the committee is appointed at that direction, then the direction it would be from the board. We want you to systematically look at this. Maybe we don't want you to bite off more than you can chew at once. Honestly, there's no way we're going to do A, B, C.
I got it.
Very well
What
in
I'd
1
like
month.
to see happen is to break it down,
There's too much.
into,
But if we have a year,
I know, what I'd like to see happen is to break it down, like 2 people take some and 2 more people take some and 2 more people, you know.
the problem with BCE is that in order to be able to review a policy, it has to be in an open public meeting. And
That's
so,
right. You can make your recommendations to the board and we review.
right, but I'm saying that's, if you're talking about having lots of 2-person committees, and you're talking about having lots of 2-person committee meetings in public with posted agendas, with, I mean, all of these things that would be very cumbersome for lots of 2-person committees to do that, as opposed to maybe having a standing 3-person committee that's what their job is, just to go through and select 5 policies a month that we can review and to see if there's anything that we need to do on, and then bring
How
it to the
many
board level.
policies do we have?
Oh,
There's like
a lot.
70.
Oh, yeah. It almost 80. 70.
Yeah, I just don't see a problem with everybody doing what they're supposed to do and just reading them.
Every month when they come to update.
I mean, just everybody doing what you're supposed to do and read the policies, and go through them individually and just come back with the things that you see wrong with them. And I mean, I have found tons of
One of those,
yeah, just, I mean, and
or
links that
linkage.
aren't there, and
Linkage.
you go look at construction management and it's referencing the FMLA
That
and
was a wrong link.
yeah, I mean, that's the kind of things that we need to just get over, you know, and that just needs to be done by everybody. We're all responsible for these policies.
Right.
So I think just read the policies, and if you find something, you know, get with her or,
But if we're gonna
just do your job.
systematically go through the policies, then we have to have some sort of a process.
Well,
Right.
I like Daniel's idea. Every month we put 5 to 7 policies on our agenda that whether they go in as a 1-line item and nobody has really any questions on them, or somebody found some points and maybe we need to look at one over the next month, have it run back to MSBA. The next month we finalize that one. But that way then we're all in the same open meeting. We're discussing the board policy in open meeting if there's discussion needs on it. And we're not making another committee for another meeting and for that and
Right.
putting, I mean, quite honestly, you're right. We all need to be aware of the policies. So we put it on just 3 people's back. You know, it's really, I still need to go read that policy from another committee. Because if you're going to present me with something I still want some background. So, if we 12 months and we say, okay, we can knock this many out over that time frame, that's where we do it. And maybe some get knocked out early because MSBA pushes another date down or something.
But then-
Yeah, I kind of like that idea versus a standing committee.
And if that's done, and if we could have a schedule then so that we had time, I know ahead of time, a month ahead of time, which policies are going to be coming up to look at. So it's not, when the agenda comes out, these are the 5 policies you're going to look at, and 3-4 days later, then we're having to.
Well,
make-
if we have 80 policies, that means we have to do 6.6 policies a month.
Know that having 16 this last month was a lot. That's just what MSBA sent us, because of updates, necessary updates and changes. So, we could we don't necessarily know when those are coming. It depends. Sometimes a new state law passes, or something's happened in a district where they said, oh, we better have a policy that speaks to this. But we could definitely move those to, they don't have to be in consent. We could move those to, new business. We could even create our own policy review section on our agenda and just make sure that we spend the time talking about those. And if we don't feel like we've had enough time, at the one board meeting, then we can put it under old business for the next time to.
And some of them, they come where you may not find a thing wrong with them. It may just be a fact of just reading it.
Right.
Reading the policies, because we need to know the policies. We need to know what we're governing. And obviously with the errors that are being found, they're not getting read.
So we're gonna put 5 to 6 on every month.
We can, if that's what you would.
Well, mine is 16.
Well, right, we gotta go 16. We're running time late.
We gotta move along if we're gonna do that, so. Okay, so is that okay with everybody?
So collectively as a board, we're going to agree that it's gonna be part of our new
Part of
new
your
business,
homework
right?
every month.
Homework every month.
And so, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 if we round up, policies a month. And that's in addition to if MSBA pulls us down.
And how are we gonna select those 6 policies a month?
Well,
Start at the beginning and go to the end.
Is
Very
there
good place to
anything-
start.
I think we get through as many as we can,
Okay.
Yeah, start
And
at A and go till they're run out, and then we'll start over again.
If we don't finish them all for whatever reason, this, we go on and where we left off.
Now, but I think it would be very important to speak to what Mrs. Matthews then talked about, was making sure that we do provide, when we're going to make changes to these policies, that we do make sure we have the time to pass these changes back through our MSBA policy service,
Yes.
They
Yeah,
won't be
that-
voted on the night that we're discussing.
get the
them.
response, and then have it come back.
Right.
And if MSBA doesn't give us a good response and we need to go to our own lawyer, we have to go to our own lawyer.
Right.
That's what we have to do.
Right. To make sure we fall within all the guidance.
Right.
Okay, so,
But
there we
their
go.
work,
Okay,
it's possible that you may not find anything wrong with some of those.
That's right.
It's just,
That's right.
okay,
Maybe
now
Okay.
decisions will be made.
so number 5 on the agenda is a consent agenda. And the reason that that's been put on there is because there's a lot of things. I feel like the consent agenda should include the minutes and the agenda for right now, until the board members become more familiar with what's going on, that we can just put items underneath there for consent.
And the consent agenda is just part of our CSIP. That's why we even use it. And defining what that looks like is another thing, but
Right.
it says for routine business, I believe.
Right, and routine business is minutes and the approving the agenda.
Well, I would like to get back to the consent agenda and not have to take a motion on, because every item that's not on the consent agenda, you act on individually. You take a motion, you take a second, you take a vote. The idea of the consent agenda is to speed up and make the meeting more efficient. So in that one fell swoop, if there's no questions, issues, concerns, you could knock out 3, 4 of those general administration functions.
You
With
could
that
also
said,
do that if-
with that said, the bills, I don't see why we can't do our homework ahead of time. Review the bills. If there's questions on the bills, ask questions ahead of time. If you have a concern, and then I don't know that we need to discuss every administrative question on a bill that could have been a 5-minute question 3-4 days earlier. That's one item, and right now, as you know, we've got 2 breakdowns of the bills. That's 2 separate motions we take, 2 separate seconds, 2 separate votes that have general questions asked. And yes, there have been some times in the last year that some have had some concerns with a bill, and that's fine. I don't have any issue with that. I just think administratively, if we do our homework ahead of time, that we could use consent agenda to its goal, and that is to help speed our meetings up.
I will say we've added another step. We have added a meeting prior to the board meeting with the treasurer, where the treasurer sits down with the superintendent to review the bills, if there are any questions, and keeping in mind that, that the budget is approved by the board. So those initial improvements are made, and every month then there's that extra check with the treasurer sitting down with the superintendent and going over those, which has helped, I think.
Because there's a reconciliation of the bills prior to the meeting.
Absolutely, there has to be.
So I'm uncomfortable with Paul, and if I have a concern that I need Paul to address, I can have him address it. If I want to address it directly with Dr. Lorenz, I can address it directly with Dr. Lorenz. And that's the best time before the board meeting is for me to do that. That way we have time to get it straight before we get in here. But like I said, if there, like Mike was saying, if there is a specific issue that we think we need to discuss as a whole, like we don't, why are we buying this much toilet paper or something like that, then we can discuss that. But we don't every month need to discuss the toilet paper. And that might help with the length of our meetings as well. I know we've been getting out pretty late, both for the public and for, executive session, and, drawing down a little bit on that, if there aren't issues, would allow us to let Paul do his job and to let, and to let you do your job.
Yes. I mean, it's what they're charged to do.
I guess one of the questions I have after looking at some of these other districts, for Tipton, for instance, it shows their board agenda, and you look at the call to order by the president, the pledge of allegiance, and then they have an opening prayer, and then it says approval of agenda. It doesn't say consent agenda, but then other districts, some of them say consent agenda, and most of them do have the approval of the bills in the first part of the agenda, which either falls under the agenda or the consent agenda. And it, like Michael said, he has no problem with anybody asking questions. I mean, it is everybody's responsibility to do their homework and find out what that particular bill is. But if you have a question, I have no problem with anybody feeling free to ask that question. But all these districts out here, they all seem to have a different type of agenda that they post. And like I said, some of them have the new business at the end, and some of them have the new business at the first part of the actual agenda.
Paul, are their agendas linked to their CSIP goals?
Well, I'm guessing.
Well, do you see it on the form there? That's something we're doing to try to show that our work is focused on our comprehensive school improvement plan, which is important. I mean, that's.
There's been some, I know I've seen it out there, other districts, and I didn't print off everything I had looked at, but we put that on our agenda.
Yeah, we
It's at the
try
bottom,
to, so
and
we
they're
see
aligned
it.
to, the goals are aligned to the actual agenda items. I have positive things to say about the consent agenda, and then some things, like new business, and the policy changes are considered new business.
That's fine.
Those shouldn't be in there. So I know when the agenda is made, when the agenda is done up, I guess the question I have is, The superintendent and the board president work on the agenda together, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And we do follow the board calendar that's approved by the board of the major things we know that we'll have to address each month, but there's other things that come up that the president can add, or myself. And then we have been very good this year about putting it out for people to look, other board members to look at the proposed agenda, that if you want to have anything that you might want to add, because members have added things over the full
and
year.
just one of the questions I have is who's the determining factor on what's on the agenda?
Really, the agenda is to be created by the superintendent and the board president, according to.
So I guess outside of a formal action from the board, I don't think we're there where we want to have a formal action for the board on what we want on the consent agenda or what we don't want. But I just, from my personal preference, as much as you want to put on there, Mary Ann, if I have a problem with it, I'll let you know and we can pull it off. But for the expediency of the meeting, if there are things like, last month we approved a grant proposal, and there was no discussion. It was just, we pretty much said, what is this? Okay, we'll vote on it.
And you had it to read.
But
Yeah.
that kind of thing could go on consent and it would not require a separate vote. It would still get something that we have, but it is every board member's prerogative and necessarily their responsibility to pull something off if there's an issue.
Well, I agree with Matt on the fact that, if you already approved something last April, and then you're looking at the approval of the last minutes of the last meeting, then it should be on the consent agenda. I mean, it should be there we shouldn't spend all night talking about one thing.
Okay, moving on. Regular agenda items. As far as speeding up our meetings, the recognition and the MSBA report. Recognitions, could we have a quarterly recognition separate event? And everybody watch the MSBA report on their own computers before they come to the meeting. Those two things there save us, 10, 15 minutes.
Well, Ms. Matthews, after looking at these other schools' agendas, lots of them have a quarterly awards banquet or a quarterly, a quarterly visitation on how they recognize people, be it students, teachers, or whatever else. I didn't see a whole lot where they did it on a monthly basis. As far as the MSBA report goes, I didn't find that on anybody else's agenda at all. But that kind of stuff is up to the board to who determines what's going to be on that agenda, whether it be you or Christie. You all are the determining factor of what goes on there and where we find the time constraints of how much time we should spend on each item.
There's nothing that says that we have to watch the MSBA report here, does it?
No.
But I'm completely comfortable with us recognizing people on a monthly basis. I mean, there are so many things that we have the ability to call out, and it allows us to bring more public into the meetings. And it allows us to, recognize some achievements. And honestly, for me, it's something to keep my eye on the ball at the beginning of the meeting. That's what I'm really doing here. That's what I'm really supposed to be
I
about.
believe it's probably fresh then too, and not
It's more timely.
news.
Now, I understand. We can get overboard with it. We could, and we can spend an hour on student, on recognition, recognizing things,
Well,
and that can get a little bit overboard. But I think that we tried to strike that balance there this year, and I think we've done a relatively good job of that. I just hate to see us not recognize people because it's not the right month.
I'm
Well,
not saying
but-
not recognizing, I'm saying recognizing a quarterly banquet or a recognition ceremony, rather. The board meeting's supposed to be business.
Well, I believe that
It's
is
supposed to
business.
be a recognition. I mean, we're talking about trying to speed up the meeting and.
I understand. I don't think that we've ever spent more than 15 minutes on recognitions.
So what you're saying is you're saying a awards banquet on a quarterly basis that takes place in a school or something like that, instead of in a board meeting, to speed things up so they wouldn't be recognized before the board. Well, that's I kind of feel like that would might be a disadvantage because we have a newspaper person in here on a monthly basis, and that would get put into the paper to, showing the recognition towards these individuals. But if we did it on a quarterly basis on a board level, then we're really going to take up a large amount of time in one meeting as opposed to breaking it down into a once a month deal. So it's kind of difficult to figure out.
The goal is to recognize and celebrate our students, staff, and community. Our other goal is to keep our focus where it needs to be, and that's on, the services and the educational opportunities that we're wanting to provide for our kids. And I think that snippet of time helps us do those two things.
Well, and I think if we did a quarter thing, I mean, then you got to start looking at, well, whose calendar's got that availability facility wise, not to take anything away from the recognition, but we do it here. It's fairly informal. We're not tasking somebody with making up and gathering all these people. And can you get here to get recognized? It's timely if we do it monthly. And I'm going to forget her name, but the little darling girl that gave us the bookmark with the blind or the braille on it, we wouldn't have gotten that at a quarterly open type Senate because it just been too much. And again, I think it's just a matter of, I think in the last year that, yes, we've done very well in keeping them minimal. And that would probably be the only thing going forward is just keep those minimal. Don't let them be a half an hour. But it is nice to see some of those. When we were over here, we had, 6 kids showed us what they did in one of their school programs. I think it's less taxing on the district as a whole. I think it is related to our business we do as a board. Lets us reflect and see impact of what maybe we did 6 months ago. So I would like to see the recognition continue on in our meetings.
Well, and I think it falls under our communication and the fact that we are live streaming this, and this little girl's grandparents could be sitting in Colorado and she could say, Grandma, are you going to be able to watch me on YouTube? So that's an opportunity for family members to share this. And it's us reaching out there and letting these people know, hey, listen, we've got this on YouTube and you can watch it and, watch your kid be recognized. That's not something, but at a board, that's only done at a board level. So if it's done somewhere else, they may not get to see that, depending upon where they're at.
I think everything I've looked, I've spent a little bit of time this last year, doing my professional development on communication, and it's never about having one thing that we do, and that's communication. It's always about a constant stream, and in order to be able to catch people's attention, there's got to be a constant stream, and we're talking about needing to make sure that positive information is out there. This provides column inches for the press. For us to have those recognitions and for us to get that picture in the paper and for Stan to have that in his paper. I just would hate to see that go away.
So did we decide that we could watch that report at home?
The MSBA. Is everyone?
I mean, if we could, and I don't know how we could, maybe if there's some way we can attach it to the tech guy person.
The link to it or something.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. We can make sure that it's part of the packet.
He's busy.
We can make that a part of the packet. That's not a problem.
Yeah. I mean, that would cut out, 10 minutes?
Here's in a static location also when you go to the MSBA site. The only thing I would add on that, and I'm fine with that, doing that, I would just add on, sometimes there's some of those legislative things that are impactful that maybe not only us, but the public needs to be aware of. And that's our delegates to, or anybody really, we all can speak on here to point those out that, hey, if you didn't catch from the video this week, we need to contact senators and stuff.
So maybe we lose the video, but we don't lose that place in the agenda. So we have a place where we can discuss those things if they need to be discussed.
Yeah.
The MSBA would be
Yes.
on. And so we often use that as a time to discuss those things when we have those legislative options that need to be.
Well, that's a good idea. So if there's nothing to discuss on it, then, yeah. But then it's on the agenda as a reminder in case we do need to.
Okay, the board calendar.
everybody, you all got a board calendar in here. It's kind of hard to, make our meetings shorter when there's a lot of things on here. And then, and anything else that comes up in addition to that. I guess one of the things I'd like to see with the, calendar is maybe some of the stuff come to us earlier than what's on here.
Well, we're expediting goal setting. Mrs. Davis and I were looking on that. I mean, we usually do our goal setting in July. We're doing it now, which is great, for next year. So that's definitely something that we are doing sooner.
Well, I like the budget. We're gonna get the budget on the 13th of May, and it has to be approved by,
June 30th, so we need to approve it by our June 10th board meeting, but I'm telling you, that is a rush to even get it, a draft completed in May because of our state legislature. We don't have a lot of those figures in, so it helps, you know, I could not prepare a budget earlier than May, and I'm hard pressed this year to get it exactly like I want it, but I will have a draft for you next Wednesday. Paul, Mr. Birchie and I are going to talk about it a little more on Monday and maybe Tuesday, you know, before the board meeting. But we're still waiting for some of those formulas from the state, figures from the state. We also have, we have to make sure we set our salaries, you know, schedules too. So, which is another big piece of the budget. It is the largest piece.
So the student handbooks, student policies and handbooks, those, we look at those in June and they're approved in June?
Normally they have been.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we could, here's our thing. Well, it's usually in July. Approved staff handbooks and guides. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I was talking about the
Your
students.
Oh, I'm sorry. The student ones usually
Yes.
are in June, and we do the staff
Aren't
ones in
the
July.
handbooks
Yeah.
yours?
Yes.
Why are we even bothering with them then?
or what?
The handbooks are developed
If
by
they're,
her.
and they're aligned to the policies, you're right. We wouldn't
Yes, why are we
necessarily, I
even
guess,
bothering
have to.
with the handbooks? I mean, there's no reason for us to even, that's hers. That is not ours. As a board.
I'm fine with that. We can take that off the list. That would give us something less to do.
Oh, I would want to look at the handbooks to make sure that,
Do
I
need
mean,
to-
we still
do we need to
have-
approve them though, as opposed to just looking at them?
well, if there's changes to be made, I mean, we got some
Handbooks.
issues with our, I understand, but we got some issues with our policies. So as we want to make sure that the policies that we're looking at that are in line with our handbooks are correct. And that they, I mean, I'm just saying, we decided we got some issues with our policies. And if they're policies that are in our handbook, I would want to make sure that they're correct. So yeah, I would like to look at the handbooks.
Are there multiple changes to the handbooks on a yearly basis?
Well, we do update them based on what MBA, you know, recommends.
Because they're aligned
and
to
Dwayne
the policies.
Martin, our lawyer, yes, I mean, we do have to make updates. In fact, we just had a administrative team meeting today where we started to work on that to get them ready.
But I know one of I had questions on the handbook last time, but it was in the consent agenda and I was new, so I didn't know when we said, yay, consent agenda, that all went through. But I learned, but I noticed there were some differences between the buildings as far as some of the discipline, I think. And so I had some questions on that, and I mean, one of my questions, I guess, would be why they're so different. I mean, I understand the age level, and I get some of that, but to me, I do still want to look at those. So in case a parent calls me and says something about the handbook, at least I'm informed about it.
And it's a good point, Jen. Some of these things are in the agenda just for a point of information. Not all of them do we necessarily have to vote on, but some of them we do. Some of them are actionable items.
So you're saying
Some's
that
just
hand-
information provided.
Yeah, some of it's just information. Like, for example, we have to set the meal prices. That has to be
Yeah.
approved, okay? But the curriculum oversight review, that's just sharing information. that make sense? It's just a point of information that month. We have to approve bus routes for the previous and upcoming year. Those are things that are required. NOC requires us to do.
I kind of agree with Daniel, and I definitely hear what you're saying, Kelly, but, we charge her to set administrative policy. She's responsible for carrying in that, in the board policies into just general daily business that goes on in the district. I would trust her that, okay, if we make a modification to policy or one comes down, it's on her that handbook addresses that policy accordingly and reflects that change when it's done. Now, can we be given a copy of it for our background, our information, that it needs to be on us to approve that handbook if it's based off of board policy to begin with?
Well, I don't think we're here to discuss the calendar thing. I think we're here to discuss whether these items brought to us a month ahead of time. I'm not prepared to change the calendar as it's listed here, February, March, all the way through. But all I'm asking is, can we get them
I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying similar to what some other board, and maybe Paul has information on these in his list over here, but where you have a first reading of a change or something, and then you'll have that revisited later on. And I think, there probably are some opportunities for us to do that, and I would trust you two to maybe identify some of those. There are other opportunities where we don't, like this budget. There's really no opportunity. We were going to have a first reading. It's going to be next month, next week, and then we're going to have to vote on it in June. I mean, we have to have it, and there's no way around some of these things, but there are on some. And so I think that in those opportunities where we have the opportunity to have a couple of passes at it, that maybe it would make sense to take another look at it and then just have it for information 1 month and be able to ask all the questions to be fully informed.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, should we be afforded the opportunity to be able to look at some of this information before we're called in here to vote on it in one meeting? You see what I'm saying?
Well,
it appears on the agenda, you're asked to vote on it, and you're
well,
not
and
fully
then we can ask
informed.
for a second reading, is what you're saying. If anybody feels uncomfortable and wants more time to review, let's say, the calendar, the budget, obviously,
Well, I mean,
like you said.
Maybe it's something we can ask our calendar committee to try to come up with them. Maybe that's possible to come up a month earlier, but we've got to drop that deadline where we got to get that out, and that's pretty much that month.
I understand that, but.
So maybe we bring it up in a month
That's why
earlier.
I'm saying, bring this stuff to us a month before it's actually on here,
Right.
because then we don't have time for a second reading.
Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying.
So that's what I would like to see. Okay, so do board members want to continue using the online website? I don't see anything wrong with that.
What is this?
Is that the board packet format you're talking about?
We move on to the next item.
Is that the next item you're referencing? there?
Yeah, board
Okay.
package time, sorry. I'm trying to speed this
Trying to
along because
expedite.
we still haven't.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm okay with, I like the online version just because
It's
quick.
just that
You can add-
it all comes across on the down. That's
This year we talked about maybe looking into the Google Docs to be able to do that. Maybe that's something we could revisit. I mean, that's entirely up to Jeff and and Dr. Lorenz and whether that's something that's possible for us to do. But I think maybe that would give us a little bit more of an opportunity. So I think it would take less time for us to get those on Google Docs than it would be for us to put them on the online website.
I think we need to set it up differently because we did try it 1 month. and
Yeah,
there
we'd
was
have
some
to-
issues.
Yeah, I think we set it up as a group, and I really just think it, honestly, as a shared folder, it could be
Share.
pretty quickly done with all of us, because we all have Google accounts now through the district, and you'd have to log in with your Google account, but it would be something where, you could pull it up on your cell phone, or, be able to have that there. and it'd be very easy for them to update if that's a problem. I would hate for us to see us go back to paper because that would cost us a lot of money and be like stick packets we go around with all the time. That's probably not the most efficient way to do it. But I mean, maybe it's something we can then look into the Google Docs again.
Didn't we try to?
Google Group.
Okay.
And instead of doing like a shared folder, and I think there was some question as to concerns about security and that kind of thing, and that's very important, especially if there is anything that is privileged data that is there that's executive session type material. But I know for the most part we only put public session material up there anyway, and so I think maybe that's something we could look at getting around.
And I found that stuff that wouldn't download correctly or wouldn't print. I had to save it to a PDF and then print it, and then it was fine. Or it would print, wide, and half of it would be cut off. So I did figure out how to do that.
Larger documents or
Mhm.
something.
So I would like to keep it.
Okay.
I mean,
Some kind of fashion.
yes, absolutely.
Some kind of online
Yeah, I'm
version.
open to trying that Google Docs thing, just save logging into the website and
And honestly, something we're asking our teachers to do too is to use the online Google tools that are free and available to them as well. So it's something that we can cast some leadership from our level that we say, hey, this is something we can do. Why can't you do it too, please?
Price is right.
Price is right.
Okay.
We're modeling.
So maybe we can discuss some of these,
Well, that's what we're talking about. Maybe not using this instead of using this, we'll go to Google Docs. Because, this takes Dr. Lorenz and her staff a fair amount of time to be able to put this together on a monthly basis and make sure this is right and test every link, as opposed to just putting it in a folder and suddenly we all have access to it. Only we have access to it. And that's, I think that would create some efficiency. So that's what they can look into. I don't think we're having a directive here that's going to happen, but it's something.
okay.
Is that okay?
So
No directive, but you guys just look into it?
we'll look into it.
Okay.
So maybe now we can move on and review some of these policies before we have to, Mr. Dwayne comes in. So we'll start out with BF, school board policy process.
So just to be clear, the crossed out stuff is the stuff that
They're
MSBA,
striking.
and then the highlighted stuff is what they're changing it to.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
So does everybody have BF? Are there any questions about BF? We're gonna review its policies on a continuous basis in an effort to ensure, so we've already voted, or not voted, but we've already said that that's one of our,
It's one of our focus goals.
right.
I didn't have any questions on that one.
Anybody got any questions on that one? Okay, good. Moving right along, CB. School superintendent.
I didn't have any questions on that one.
I don't have any questions on the policy, but I do think it presents an opportunity for us to have a discussion as a board about how we're using our superintendent. It's come to my attention in the last month that a fair amount of time has been used by our board individually as board members of her time in reviewing things and in having meetings and in being in her office. And I think as the board, the policy that we're talking about approving here says that she has directive, we give her directives, and then she takes those and implements them. And that implementation takes time. And I think it's very important that we not overuse her time from a board level because then that takes her eye off of the kids. There's a fair amount of what we need to do, what she has to do, is something that is going to take time. But I do think it's something that we do need to be aware of, that every time that we're in her office is potentially time that we're taking away from time that she's spending implementing this policy and honestly keeping our eye focused on the kids. I also think that, I've heard this from multiple people inside the district central office, the district team office, that there have been evidences of lack of decorum and etiquette when it comes to conversations with the superintendent. The superintendent's door is thick, and if there's a volume level problem inside of her office that other people can notice, then that's probably a little bit of an issue. And so I would just charge all of us as board members to make sure that we're treating our superintendent with the utmost respect, with decorum. I know that there are often issues in which we disagree. I disagree with Dr. Renz every once in a while, but that doesn't mean that we need to result to not treating ourselves and treating others as we wish to be treated. The final thing I think it comes down to with this policy directly, the superintendent is charged with creating, implementing, and maintaining those procedures and to provide guidance for the policy implementation of the district. That level of what we're talking about doing here is a lot of trust that we put in to the superintendent. And that trust is very important. And honestly, I think that we have selected the right person to do that. And I don't know if there's anybody else in this room that believes, unlike I do, that the person sitting in that superintendent chair loves this district more than anybody else in this room. And we all love the district quite a bit. And when we don't trust the superintendent to do her job, when we don't trust her to do things that are her prerogative and give her the ability to do so, then we de-incentivize her wanting to stick around. We de-incentivize her staff from wanting to do their best. And that's very important. When we talk about having highly qualified staff, we talk about that not only when we talk about our teachers, but we talk about it at our administrators. And I think it would be very hard for us to replace what Dr. Lorenz does with anybody else. And it's very important that we get our incentives correct from a board level. And when it comes to trusting Dr. Lorenz, it's very important that we individually as board members do our part to make sure that we're giving her, when we ask her to do something from a board level, 7 people, we're asking her to do something, then we're going to have her do that, and we will follow up and we will make sure that it is done. That's our job. But when it comes to each of us individually, taking our time, making sure that we're addressing her with proper decorum and etiquette, and then making sure that we trust her to do her job, I think it's very important that we raise the bar a little bit.
Well, no, I think people should be able to go and ask her questions or call her, especially, if we have questions about stuff. Now, the time she spends with the board president and the treasurer, that should be, I think, maybe as a day or a meeting that you all decide upon so that, everybody gets their stuff together. But I think we should be able to call her. I haven't heard anything about, yelling or anything like that, but I hope, we all would be respectful when it comes dealing with each other, especially,
Well, I think it's just a matter of, and you're exactly right. I'm guessing it's the same with Ms. Matthews, that, we always set up a meeting and so that was on our schedule, so we're aware of it. I think we just need to be cognizant of of the drop-ins, the pop-ins that are gonna, not just the 2-minute question, or, because by all means, we need to be, she's gonna be willing to answer the phone and answer the questions. I think it's just more of that, keeping track of, if you think about if it was at your job and you think of customers that just drop in on you and you've got to drop everything. It's just keeping that in check and being aware of it, the awareness level.
Well, I guess my input on that's gonna be, and I have stopped in and talked to Dr. Lorenz or Miss Norman, to ask questions. And I feel like if I do have a question, and I don't want to have to make an appointment to do that. I'm not trying to take up a lot of their time because I know they are very busy people tasked with running this school district. But I do have questions as a board member and a treasurer that I would like to see answered. As far as Matt saying people are being loud and stuff like that, I don't find that to be taking place in my opinion. But you still you have to respect everybody you deal with and talk to, whether it be a superintendent or anybody else in this community. You treat everybody fairly, So I would like to think that every one of these board members has shown these two ladies respect because of their education, because of their quality of their level of experience, But like I said, still, I have been in there multiple times to try to discuss stuff and find out how stuff works. And you can expect to see me some more. I mean, if I have to call you up and ask you, hey, do you have 15 minutes of your time that you can spend with me? I will do that. So, but I am happy that, that you all have a willingness to work with everybody on this board and a willingness to listen to everybody on this board. Like Matt said, you can't change the world overnight. Sometimes these changes take an extended period of time, not 2 days, not 3 days, maybe more like 3 months, but I am happy that, as a board, we are working together and trying to move forward, trying to work with the public, trying to establish a long-term vision of what we can do to try to help, these kids and the teachers and the faculty in this district, so. I just want to tell you thank you for, being willing to listen to everybody that's on this board. And when I go in there to ask questions about, how something works, whether it be SysFin or anything else, I do appreciate the feedback and the help I get from the folks that I talk to. So thank you.
I see, Mr. Martin's here. Do we want to take a 10-minute break before we enter in, or do we want to continue on with one more?
I think we just knock these out. I don't know that any of these are I don't know that all these are going to take a lot of discussion. So,
has everybody had an opportunity to read most of these board policies? I mean, I've seen a couple small changes, but that's nothing we can't discuss later on down the road. Ms. Matthews, did you have any questions as far as any of these particular policies? Do you have any, Kristen?
Yeah, Dr. Norman and I just have a couple that we would like to look at here. I need to get them pulled here. They are policies, respectfully, GCBDA, which is professional staff short-term leaves, and policy GDBDA, which is support staff leaves. And if we will look at the reference copy, I want to tell you the right page, on page 3, on GCBDA, if we'll look on page 3, we are recommending to be in alignment with our handbooks and with our procedures in the district. Under number 1, annual leave, that it read absences may be charged against annual leave for the following reasons, not sick leave. because per our board, yeah, per our leave package, we have leave days, you know, we do not have sick days. Okay, and then we are asking that number 2, on sick leave, right before we get to 2, excuse me, we need to insert unused annual leave will accumulate as sick leave, because we just call it leave and then it rolls into if they're needed.
Would you repeat that?
Yes,
Unused.
that unused annual leave will accumulate as sick leave.
So you want to adopt sick leave then?
Well, we have, they can bank up to 60 days.
Right, but you said you
Of
have
leave.
no sick leave
We
now.
just call it annual.
Okay,
leave.
so, but you're saying now you want
They
to
can.
adopt sick leave.
It's what we already have, but we call it annual leave. They can bank up to 60 days. I missaid that, I'm sorry. They can bank up to 60 days.
Right. Mhm.
Right. Let me
Right,
clarify
right,
that so it makes a little more sense. Absences may be charged against annual leave, not sick leave, for the following reasons. And then before section 2, unused annual leave, the 10 days or the 12 days, depending on the length of the contract, will accumulate as sick leave. And according to our policy, that is correct. I didn't mean to misspeak. Unused sick leave can be accumulated up to 60 days. But we call all of our leave, when it's first issued each year, annual
Annual
leave.
leave.
We don't say you only have like 8 days of sick leave and 2 professional days.
So if you were to move that to accumulation of 60 days sick leave,
Mhm.
if they could accumulate, that would be if they had to have an operation or
Right,
something
right.
like that, then that would give them the
Maternity leave.
time
Yes,
to,
yes,
and they would still get paid for it.
yes, yes. So I apologize for that, that's right. And then, on the other one, it would be GDBBA, that is under support staff leaves. And we would have to strike, of course, what's in the highlighted area under sick leave and add unused annual leave will accumulate as sick leave. Because as MSBA was recommending that they were outlining the number of days of sick leave.
Mhm.
It's really just the same reference. It's to, one's for classified and one is for certified staff.
And that was the sick leave.
Yeah.
I had a question on GCBPB. We are not penalizing any employee, class certified staff if they break their contract.
That is correct.
And it's my understanding that a lot of school districts do.
Some do and some don't. It kind of goes back to a philosophy of, you know, if they're not wanting to stay in their contract, do you really want them working, you know, with your students and staff? You know what I mean? Yes. But the other piece of that, we don't want late departures either, you know, so that's why some districts do. I think a long time ago we had that, back when I was first year 20 years ago, and then over time, the board chose not to use that. They do.
To go back to GDBDA and GCBDA, does there need to be a motion made on that then to adopt those changes to it? Or are we just gonna adopt them as whole and make the changes?
Well, since we're in a work session right now,
Well, we could take action on them because this is a regular meeting, but
Well,
We
that's
would-
what I mean, can we do it as a whole?
we
or
would-
just
we would identify those with those changes that's presented tonight, and then we could take them off.
Okay.
So what we give employees to start off with is annual leave. That
Mhm.
annual leave can turn into sick leave,
Right,
over time, and they can bank up to 6.
which I don't think's a bad
Yeah.
deal.
No, it's good in case of an emergency
Yeah.
or.
Yep.
A
Okay.
lot of districts will designate, whether it's sick leave or annual leave. That's where they go.
The medication policy,
Yes.
JHCD. That's the one we always revisit every year.
Yes, we do.
And MSBA doesn't like us, and we've told MSBA to stick it most of the time.
Mhm.
What was your?
I mean, in the past, we've had a formal recommendation from the nurse concerning what we should do on the policy. Has there been, do we have one this year on whether I just don't, I don't feel comfortable taking the MSBA's language on it directly because there's been a reason that we've not taken their language directly. I mean, I don't think we've ever discussed medication derived from hemp oil
No.
before in the past, but we've talked about whether we're going to keep,
What's it with EpiPens?
EpiPens or whether we're not going to keep EpiPens,
Right,
and that
yeah.
whether that was going to be a board policy. And I think it was recommended last year that we did not want to keep EpiPens because that was going to create a liability as far as the cost, and then the B, making sure that those things were rotated out on a regular basis. And there was concern that if we messed it up, then this was going to legally put us in some hot water because we said we were going to do something and then we didn't do it.
Well, with JCAD being president in the town now, it's a little better than more.
Yeah, there are a lot more, the response time's down, that's for sure. Well, I would just want us to run, I mean, JHCD needs to change because of this hemp oil. So we don't have any choice about that, but we might have a choice about the rest of it. And so maybe if we don't mind pulling JHCD, if that's okay, I'm sorry. I mean, but I just think that we probably ought to get some sort of an official take on JHCD before we go forward, because I just don't want us to open ourselves up.
So we've hired somebody for Ms. Jordan's position.
Yes.
Maybe.
Can we have them run by it?
Right.
Because,
Definitely.
well,
Or
is
as
that,
well.
Right now.
Well,
Well-
does the school, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but does the school nurse run under like the county medical director, or is it just,
We operate under our RN's license.
yep, and
okay, so she doesn't fall under the county medical director then at all?
No.
Okay.
and there was some issue with standing, whether we needed to have a standing prescription order from a physician or something like that for her to operate under to be able to administer this kind of medication. So, either Mrs. Jordan or if our new person has the ability to comment on this, whether they feel comfortable with it.
Okay.
Just to have some more advice, I just would
Definitely.
hate for us to make a motion on that and then need to go back and change it.
Good catch.
Yeah.
And then, so that's JHCD, and then, I'm not seeing any changes on BBF or EEA. So we don't need to necessarily approve those, right? Because those are just in there for our information.
Those are the two that were added late, correct?
Oh, the,
Uh,
one was the bus. and-
One was board member ethics and one was on transportation. And that was requested by board members to review.
Yeah, I read it, I just wasn't sure if I-
I do have them online if you want to pull them up, on the projector if we would like to.
Or we can put them on as part of our review later since we don't have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no changes, so there's no reason for us to approve them,
Yeah, I
if
would
there's no
just move
changes.
them to
Let's
the
talk about.
review, that
let's
way we
review
can
them.
at least
Okay.
have them in front of us to,
Yeah,
Okay.
review.
that sounds great.
With the IGDA, I'm confused with all this group does not fall under one of these categories. It's probably circulatory. The following are some of the groups the courts have found. Does this mean that these groups can't meet in our school or what? I don't understand the verbiage here. IGDA, student initiated group use of district facilities.
So this just provides that a group of students in a secondary school can create a group that is non-curricular and have the ability to be able to meet in our district facility. They have to have an employee of the district, but they can't be the one in charge, honestly. So that's honestly what that's looking. It's not that they can't meet. In fact, it's providing that they can meet. And there's a reason that they can meet because there's Equal Access Act and then there's the Missouri law.
I think basically what it's saying is if a bunch of, I mean, this is the way I'm reading it. If a bunch of kids want to start a photography club, well, and then you say, okay, go ahead, but then
we tie a photography club in with curriculum, probably figure a way. Like we have an anime club.
Well,
we tie it in
what I'm
curriculum
getting
wise.
at though is what it says is the next line is it must allow student initiated groups that include religious expression. In other words, if a group that wants to start some type of religion wants to use the school for their club, that's what
They have to be allowed.
they have to allow them to do
Yes.
that. And that's what the House bill is addressing.
Well, this says K through 12 districts, and then we're down here, we're saying grades 9 through 12. So I don't know if that's a,
That's because the reason it says K through 12 districts is because there's an IGDA policy for K through 8 districts that the MSBA puts out because they have different language because they don't have to deal with 9 through 12 students, which is honestly these groups, these students can create these groups in 9 through 12. They can't do it in other
Well, they're
lower
just
grades.
defining the secondary schools, what they're going as
Right.
9 through 12.
So the only
instead of
reason-
some secondary schools are 8 through 12.
Right.
But it's just a definition of what a secondary school is.
Right. So that's the only reason that sub-note is there on the title is because it's for our type of a district.
Right.
so are we ready to move into executive?
Well, do we want to approve these policies? I make a motion that we approve,
All of them, but
well, BF, CB, FEF, JBC, GBCA, GBCBC, GCBDA with the approvals with the
Right.
recommendation
And those, yes.
of the approvals there. GCPB, GCPD, GCPE, GCPF, GDBDA, GDPD, IGBCB, IGDA, IKFB, and that's it. So we're just marking off JHCD, BBF, and EEA for. Does that make sense?
Could you repeat that? Just
I will.
kidding.
I
You stood in front of the mirror and practiced that.
will. Yeah, I did. No. I read scripts for a living.
so
now,
we have to have a second to that.
I'll second that.
Okay. So
So
all,
that's to include the changes that Dr. Lorenz wanted to
The
make.
changes.
Yeah, on
As noted.
GDBDA
Just to
and
clarify.
GCBDA. Yes.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All, any opposed? Any abstain? And then we'll discuss this one, the nurses one later.
Yes. JHCD.
So, do you guys want to take a 5-minute break?
Well, we need a motion.
First.
Oh, a motion to go, oh, yeah,
Kelly needs to do your job.
Kelly. Okay.
I make a motion that we adjourn to executive session to discuss collective bargaining pursuant to RSMO 610.0219.
There's,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote? Roll call vote?
Aye.
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 10-minute break, 5-minute break? Now, wasn't that a terrible thing for the public to have to come to this meeting so that they would